The Ginyu Tokusentai have gone through quite a bit of re-examination in recent years, with some viewing them as an unnecessary midsection of the Freeza Arc, or that their personalities fall flat. Frankly, I find this to be quite a short-sighted critique, and will go over their importance. The most obvious reason for their presence in the story is bridging the gap between Goku's arrival and his fight with Frieza, as, even had Toriyama changed the battle powers and the like, Goku was still willing to stick to his promise to Kaiol, and even having Frieza bring the battle to them would make it difficult or near impossible to have the same character moments for those other than Goku, such as Gohan's rage at Kuririn's fatality, proving the bond they've developed. Kuririn's bravery in saving him, Piccolo merging with Nail acting as a stepping stone to the Chekhov's gun of his merging with Kami, and Vegeta being humbled by Frieza and Goku. That only had such an impact with the drastic power-ups he'd gone through. At the very least, Ginyu himself served an important function to the plot, as well as those Vegeta slew, showing the difference between his and Goku's approaches. There's also the weird critique of some saying they seemed tacked on compared to Zarbon and Dodoria, who had more established elite roles. But if anything, this only shows Frieza as an efficient leader, with the Ginyu Tokusentai having a commando or special forces role, but lacked the attitude for a managerial position. A final critique on their plot relevance, often brought up for Recoome specifically, is him having a similar role to Nappa, of beating up the other characters until Goku arrives. Goku even going on to defeat Bata with a similar pose to against Nappa, but with Nappa having the greater impact of causing many of the Dragon team to lose their lives, while the latter point can't be really held against Recoome when the story wasn't yet at the spot for Gohan, Kuririn or Vegeta to be sacrificed. Recoome and Nappa's similar roles is a more valid criticism than the other. I would say this ignores repetition, allowing one to draw parallels or comparisons, of which can be found here, such as the way Gohan fights, both showing off the drastic change in his experience and personality to have happened since these two events, and the injuries Recoome inflicted while messing around would make it apparent Nappa's damage to the Dragon team would seem non-existent compared to Recoome's if the latter had the same amount of time to fight them. They also elevate the story through small details, the most notable being most if not all members being confirmed as mutants of their species, which draws attention to the power genetic anomalies have in the series, Gohan being the prime example. There's also how Frieza's interactions with them add to his own characterization and showing what he finds awkward, as well as offering a lot more positive feedback to Ginyu, along with knowing what and what not to entrust Ginyu with, displaying why Frieza works as a leader beyond just raw power, in a manner those such as Zarbon only offered a glimpse of due to his incompetence. Those plot elements out of the way, it's time to go over their characterization. A criticism some have of their manga selves is that many of them aside from Ginyu and maybe Gurt are fairly interchangeable in their personalities, but I'd say that ignores a lot of aspects both of their design and individual lines. For instance, despite his design, similar role and playful sadism, Recoome isn't necessarily as stupid as Nappa, whereas one, typically closer to the haughty Bishonen, like Jis, ends up being more absent-minded in both martial and social matters. Despite this, Jis also displays an understated detail of knowing Frieza's fear of the Super Saiyan, as opposed to even those such as Dodoria, solely viewing Frieza as concerned in the Saiyan's strength in numbers, showing he, or at least Ginyu, is more observant on other details. Bata also doesn't have much to distinguish him beyond his speed, which isn't as stupid as many believe for reasons I've mentioned elsewhere. But that gimmick does solidify his personality as one defined by one skill, much as Vegeta reaffirms his worth at this point through his role as the Saiyan Prince. An important thing concerning the Tokusentai's more unified ideals is that none of them, even Bata and Jis, seem to have much of a personal care for each other, despite despite their great synchronicity, and Ginyu being aware of their capabilities well enough to not order them much, with self-centeredness and a lack of care for allies being a common way Toriyama makes a character seem villainous. The more casual interactions between them makes the main thing they take away from losing an ally being ruined poses or reputation from other displays of mercilessness. Out of the individual members, Ginyu is obviously the most fleshed out and stands out compared to many of Frieza's soldiers, along with having the skills as a leader to keep his men in line through equal criticism and reward. His ki control being more refined than most others within Frieza's army shows his experience and knowledge of the kind of opponents that can be found around the universe, as expected of one leading a special task force. He also displays his own sense of honor, despite his body change being an underhanded tactic, with him at least wanting to go about countering an opponent by himself, reflecting Goku in some ways. Such a powerful technique, not being used to rise up the ranks any further, also shows his genuine loyalty to Frieza for his leadership and ability to allow Ginyu to operate as he wishes. On the subject of the body change, him seeming unaware of how a body he's not used to can be far weaker confuses many, but it makes sense that he'd have no reason to use it against one like a Saiyan, who had refined what ki he naturally possesses through a specific Shugya, as opposed to natural mutants, with it merely displaying that even the Frieza soldier most experienced with ki is still limited by the ideology of the army. That said, his body change or skill like Gruda's time freeze being very broken abilities in the right hands helps the group stand out as having very unconventional abilities, and even the less impressive ones of the other three, such as Rikum's focus on bombastic attacks, Bata's speed, or Jisa's more focused shape of his ki attacks, like the Crusher Ball, present them as a varied team, fitting with their nature as a parody of Tokusatsu and Super Sentai tropes. On that subject, the Tokusentai being a merged-in version of these tropes help elevate their role, with not only them being subordinate to the archetypical evil conqueror Sentai tend to oppose, but their dramatic poses being far different from the movements of other characters for special attacks also acts as an interesting microcosm of the evolution of the special attack trope, whereas the signature movements of other characters draw from traditional beliefs of chi cultivation requiring specific movements to help it flow, or the principle of the kata and kiai helping to refine one's potency, and this being pointed out throughout the manga, with a lack of need to utilize these principles being treated as an impressive feat in ki control. The hyperbolization of these ideas that occurred with Tokusatsu have attacks like Crusher Ball be far more over-accentuated for what they accomplish, and thereby act as a successful satire, despite the dramatic poses taken for techniques within the series. This is also an area that allowed the Ginyu Tokusentai to stand out compared to Toriyama's later uses of this parody, with the Pride Troopers and Gamma playing their roles far more straight as heroes, and the Kempei Tokusentai in Daima just being a waste. The ideas Toriyama let flow with them also may have helped the exaggerated portrayal of Gotenks, who encapsulated a lot of the ideas of the Buu arc, but that might be a topic left for another video. There's also Garhan's Great Saiyaman poses, seeming to be inspired by his encounter with them, which, while having some traumatic undertones in what he went through, is interesting in him enjoying their actions if used as a force for good, in a similar manner to their boss's evil nature being the one thing preventing his father from finding him a thrilling rival. Going back to that point of Daima though, I would say the Kempei Tokusentai does display the scope of what could be done with Ginyu, as low-scale comedic interactions being fleshed out beyond the character quirk would make for a great spin-off if juxtaposed with the evil attributes of the group and more fleshing out of their individual characters, that make it even more disappointing that the main thing we are given for secondary spin-offs have either been pure parodies, bottom-tier fanfiction, or the equivalent of a kid coming up with a story by smashing action figures together. I mean, can you imagine a spin-off anime of the Ginyus using their Kai theme that even survived the Yamamoto plagiarism scandal, of them going about both their daily lives and wiping out planets? It's unfortunate the majority seem to prefer just seeing characters get a new transformation, but oh well. Anyway, that rambling aside, aside, the Tokusentai's role helps satirize things in not just the exaggerated nature of both genres, but through Frieza's role and inspiration as a galactic real estate speculator, as this causing the villainy of the Freeza Arc to be inspired by concerns towards Japan's economy at the time, having the Tokusentai in some ways act as those heroic tropes being monetized by businessmen for their own means. All that said, though not the most engaging part of the arc, the Ginyu Tokusentai play their role well in aiding the flow of the Freeza arc, presenting interesting ideas through their satirical nature, and show why Toriyama would often draw back to them for inspiration. Thank you for watching this analysis. Do all the typical YouTube stuff of liking, subscribing, and share it around. Also, on the subject of the Tokusentai, maybe you like this old what if on if Bonyu stayed with them, even though this what if honestly has some problems.